I had a conversation yesterday with a guy I've known to be a good, solid conservative and a rational thinker, which was surprising to realize that he's a Jew hater. That just doesn't compute. Conservatives are not Jew haters. Conservatives love Israel. They support Israel because Israel is considered the little America. It's the only democracy in the entire Middle East. But this guy thinks that the Jews run all the banks in the world, that Israeli military indiscriminately kill Palestinians inside Gaza for no reason whatsoever. He probably thinks that the Jews invented humidity for some reason. This conversation took place through text messages. I want to share it with you. Now, while keeping this person private, I want to go to some of the arguments that were given to me because I think a lot of people fall for the left's propaganda for the Palestinians and their elected government party, Hamas, the terrorist group. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back. So I'll start it off showing the first text, which said, from what I understand, the Jews give the Palestinians about half a day's electricity and they ration their water. Plus, they claim that it's nothing for extremist Jews and soldiers to kill them indiscriminately. When you treat people barbarically, it doesn't surprise when they respond barbarically. It sounds just like it came from Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, doesn't it? Or AOC, right? So my response was, if Israeli soldiers killed Palestinians in Gaza indiscriminately, don't you think MSNBC and CNN would blast those stories on every show around the clock, 24/7, and then find a way to blame Donald Trump? I heard Mike Pence blame Trump for the Hamas slaughter. Is that true? So I wrote back saying that Israel left Gaza in 2005. That's a fact. They had nothing to do with it from 2005 on. In 2007, they elected a new government, the people in Gaza. And the people chose Hamas, a terrorist organization, to represent them. I also said that Israel gives Gaza about 50 tons of food, medicine, and clothing each week. They didn't have to do that on their own, but their government wasn't helping them. In fact, Hamas is known for saying to their own people, and they say it pretty regularly, that they care more about killing Jews than they do about the welfare of their own constituents. I went on and said that Hamas began smuggling weapons on ships that brought the food and the medicine, etc. And those weapons were used to kill Jews. So Israel started a blockade. Now, that's the blockade that the Hamas terrorist supporters always complained about. We got to stop the blockade, man. So they would board the ships and check their inventory, and they found weapons every week. So when the terrorist supporters say that they've got to end the blockade, what they're really saying is that they want Hamas to be able to smuggle weapons in through those ships. I mean, any decent and rational thinking person would understand why there has to be a blockade, because those weapons are used to kill Israelis. They don't care. See, I don't think my friend understands this part of it all, the equation, because he's just listening to the other side and the conspiracy theorists. A friend of mine sent me a video that was done by Russell Brand. I'll leave the link down in the description. It was an unusual Russell Brand video because he wasn't the excitable person that he normally is. He was pretty calm for Russell Brand. Now, I like Russell because since he stopped being a Hollywood a-hole and started being an influencer, he breaks a lot of good stories and he tries to bring perspective from both sides. And I believe that's what he did in this video I'm about to talk about. And what his video was he showed another video that was done, I believe, about 2 years ago of a Jewish man who claims to be a Holocaust survivor. And I have absolutely no reason to not believe him. Okay. And this man was very sincere about his own history, which he goes over. And he gives his bona fides, and he points out that his family was very tight with the man who created the Likud party. But then he gets into the formation of Israel in the late 1940s and how he was so happy that the Jews finally had a place to call their own. And he goes on to talk about how the barbed wire of Auschwitz was replaced by the walls of safety for Jews around the world. It was very touching. But then he talked about how at the formation of Israel, around 1947-48, how the Israelis were very hard and brutal and cruel even against the so-called Palestinians who were in Israel, and then they expelled them. And the way he tells it makes you believe that the Israelis are just terrible people. But what I didn't like is that he completely skipped over the reasons why they had to expel these people and the reasons why they had to be brutal with them. I'm going to tell you right now. The British, up until the late 1940s, were controlling the Middle East area that we're talking about. In 1947, an armistice agreement was written up by the British government. Eventually, the Jews signed it, and the Arabs signed it so that the Brits could leave the area, because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to get out. The part that this man left out, whether intentionally or unintentionally, was that the Arab world never accepted the armistice agreement. They figured they would sign them and get the British out of there, and then they'd go and slaughter all the Jews. So the government, especially that of Syria, Egypt, and what was known as Transjordan, now Jordan at the time, told all the Arabs living in Israel to leave their homes, get out, abandon their homes and their country, because they were bringing in their three armies together to slaughter every Jewish man, woman, and child. And then they could come back when it was over, when they were all dead. And they all complied. Arabs in every neighborhood where they lived in Israel left their homes so that the Arab armies could come in and slaughter the Jews, every man, woman, and child. This is a part of history, people. And it didn't work out so well for the three Arab armies because the Jews defeated them in that war and remained in the land that is now known as Israel. So then, after realizing that all the Arabs who lived among them participated in an attempt at genocide, something that these people had just gone through in Nazi Germany, they realized that they could not live among them and be safe ever again. So the Arabs who tried to go back to their homes were stopped and told, you don't live here anymore. You legally left your home so that Arab armies could slaughter every Jew in Israel. You gave up the right to your home. Now, I understand the Jew haters will disagree with this. I can hear them now. They weren't allowed to take their homes from them. Well, my response would be that the Arabs from the other countries were not allowed to try to slaughter and commit genocide, if you will, of every Jew in the land either. So when you hear the man talk about how brutally the Israelis treated the Arabs, just remember it was because of the parts that he failed to tell you, which was the Arabs continually tried to get back into the land and attacked Israeli Jews constantly after complying with their genocide. In other words, they just didn't get the message. And it has been like that ever since. And the reason I bring this up is because this man is a Holocaust survivor. He went through the most brutal time in the 20th century where living another day was a victory. People in those concentration camps, especially in Auschwitz, and there were others, what kept them going every day was the hope that one day, someday, they may be able to get out of there alive. And so this is what I'm talking about. A Holocaust survivor can be converted to be a person who espouses one side of the historical record because of all the propaganda that has been thrown at him by an ideology that cries victimhood. And because it cries victimhood, it gets an awful lot of attention and support from the Marxists of the world. The Palestinians' thirst for Jewish genocide hasn't subsided one bit. Just read Hamas's charter. Just listen to what they say and then watch as people around the world support Hamas, even though they say they support the Palestinian people. Even this man in the video said that you can support the Palestinian people and not support Hamas. Well, I take issue with that. I don't want to generalize people, but I have seen very, very, very few Palestinians who do not want the death of every Jew on the planet. So that's the other side of that story that people like my friend who I'm texting with doesn't seem to either understand, know about, or agree with. All right, so his next reply was, so you're saying that the Jews don't ration electricity and water? I thought that was fascinating because that's exactly what the terrorist supporters, the people who support Hamas, complain about. They complain about ending the blockade and ending the occupation, and then they complain that they're turning off the water and the electricity right now. I've already explained why there's a blockade. And if you don't agree with them doing that, then there's something wrong with you, because the Israelis have a right to stop weapons coming in that are going to be used to kill their own people. And when they say end the occupation, I mean, I've pointed out in the past, what occupation? Israel left Gaza in 2005. What occupation are they talking about? There's no occupation. But the water is what got to me. You see, Gaza uses Israeli water and Israeli electricity. Now, my question is, how come their elected government, the people of Gaza, the Hamas terrorists, how come they haven't provided water and electricity for their own people? It seems that they figured, why bother when we've got it covered with Israel as far as providing water, electricity, and food and medicine and clothing by the tons? What kind of leadership does that? Now, Hamas certainly has the money. We'll get into that in a minute. But even so, I mean, think about it. The EU donated water pipes so that Hamas could run their own water to the people living in Gaza. But that was never going to happen. Why? Because Hamas dug the pipes up and used them to launch rockets at the very people who are providing water and electricity to Gaza. That's a messed up way to think. We don't have to spend money on our own people for infrastructure because the people we're trying to kill are providing it for us. That's just sick. Now watch this. There's the pipes. It's water pipes. They're lifting them out of the ground. Now watch. There you go. I don't think that's the reason why the EU donated the pipes. Do you? So the next time someone complains that Israel is supplying the water to Gaza, now you know that the reason why they are is because their own fricking government doesn't want them to have water through their efforts. They would rather kill Jews than allow the life's blood of humanity, water, to go to their people. And how come the Gaza government, Hamas, how come they haven't created their own electric power supply station? They certainly have the money. I mean, they can afford it. Historically, reports have indicated that Iran, one of Hamas's primary backers, has provided them with tens to hundreds of millions of dollars annually. That means each year for those of you on the left, at different intervals and different periods of time. There were times when the support was reportedly reduced due to political rifts, and other times when it surged, especially during times of conflict. On top of Iranian support, Qatar has been another significant benefactor, committing hundreds of millions, especially for reconstruction in Gaza. For instance, after the 2014 conflict, Qatar pledged $1 billion for reconstruction in Gaza. Although it's worth noting that not all of this would go directly to Hamas and instead would be spent on broader rebuilding projects. Really? So then why is Gaza a shithole where the people living there have to rely on Israeli food, water, electricity, medicine, and the other things that make you feel like you're living in the 21st century? So the final text was, where the fuck are they supposed to go? Into the sea? I heard Egypt won't take them, so I guess they'll be coming here. Now, this is another interesting one because it sounds like he's blaming Israel for Egyptian government refusing to allow the Palestinians in. Israel and the United States asked them to open their border. Israel is about to decimate Gaza, and they asked officially for Egypt to open the border. They said, could you please let these people in? Because we don't want to harm them. Egypt is a country that has a border with Israel and Gaza at the same time, but they refused to open their border because they said they wanted to remain neutral in this conflict. Now, I'm willing to bet, I don't have any proof, but I'm willing to bet that Hamas asked them to remain neutral to not let their people escape. Because it was reported earlier that while Israel was sending leaflets, making radio broadcasts and television broadcasts, and probably sending up fucking smoke signals, they are asking the people of Gaza to get the hell out because they're going to level the city. It's being reported that Hamas is telling the people to stay inside their buildings because they probably want to use their deaths politically. This is what they do. They're cowards who use human shields. Now, the latest reports are that Israel held off the invasion for a while because they were told that it's difficult to get all the people out of the hospital quickly. And even though Israel knows what they mean is it's difficult to get all of their weapons and bombs that they have in the basement of the hospital, but you can't blame Israel for this. I mean, if any other country had someone invade them by going after small towns and attacking the vulnerable, would there be any question that the country should retaliate? Yes. People like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Bernie Sanders, AOC, and my texting friend. So you may be wondering why I have the article up there the whole time. I haven't talked about it yet. I wanted to get through the point where I say that people support the Palestinians, people on the left, they support the Palestinians, not even wanting to listen to the Israeli side of it. And they support Hamas and the Palestinians. Now, they'll tell you, oh, we don't support Hamas. They're a terror group. We support the Palestinians. When you support Palestinians who cheer up and down for what Hamas does, if you support people who support Hamas going into Israel and killing hundreds of people and there's 1,000 people missing, they're probably dead too, then you support Hamas. So these two women, they're not in Qatar, they're not in Iran, Tehran, they're not even in Gaza, they're in London, England. And there's a wall there that people put up pictures and nameplates of missing people from Israel from Saturday's attack. And they're just going up there and just grabbing them down. They probably go all over the city and do that. They're just grabbing them down. In other words, their hate is so strong against Jews in Israel that they don't think that people have the right, loved ones and friends, family, that they don't have the right to find out what happened to them. So that's who you're supporting, people like that. All right. So thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.
Every day I'm looking for a way to return to the time when everything was easy to learn. Don't know when it started to get so serious, building up an illusion of a world full of trust.